Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Transfer Talk podcast. My name is not Pete Graves. Yes, it's Dharmesh here. Dharmesh Sheth. Pete Graves still on sabbatical. Sorry, holiday. He has been away for a while. That tan is going to look very, very good, I'm predicting. But we have got a real treat for you on today's Transfer Talk podcast because I am delighted to say that I'm joined by a true friend of the show, not only of the show, but of myself. He used to be a colleague, but he's turned into a friend. ESPN's Julien Laurens. Welcome back to the Transfer Talk podcast. Julien, it's been too long. How you doing?
Hello, mate. Thank you so much for having me again. I'm doing great. And you?
I'm very good. How's the window gone for you so far? You must be. For me, look, it's 3 months, this one.
Yeah.
It feels like it's gone on for 3 years, this one.
I agree. I mean, we kind of knew we would have some sagas because we always do, but I don't think any of us predicted the Alexander Isak situation and development and everything. I've had a lot of my French boys, wherever they came from, Germany, France, Spain, coming to the Premier League, which is great. And Ugo Ekitike and Ryan Cherki, I guess, being the most important one, certainly for me, because of the clubs they signed for, because of the profile that they have, because it is also a World Cup year. So yeah, it's been great so far. The thing is, as you know, I was on holidays with the kids and the phone keeps ringing or the text keeps coming and you still need to work even if you're not really working. But that's fine. That's part of it.
Listen, you mentioned Alexander Isak there. We're going to come to him in just a moment, but I just want to do a quick overview because Premier League clubs, I mean, I'm astonished at this. They've spent more than £2.36 billion on signings this summer. The record spend in a single window was around £2.46 billion. That was in the summer of 2023. So we're just over £100 million away from breaking that record. I remember when there was £100 million spend in a window, yeah. We were thinking, goodness me, that is big. Now we're just £100 million away and we're just like throwing it away flippantly from breaking a record of 2.46 billion. Are you surprised by the level of spending by Premier League clubs, or does it not surprise you anymore?
No, I think I expected some of the top clubs to have big windows. I think we knew that Liverpool would spend big because they hadn't spent that much in previous windows and they had a squad that needed strengthening and kind of not rebuilding, that's a bit strong, but they needed something. So we knew they would be there. I think you knew that City, considering the season that they had last year and where their squad was, that also would be big investment. We knew that Arsenal were going in, wanting a striker. We knew Zubimendi was coming quite a while ago. So we knew that Arsenal will invest too, and then Chelsea always invest. And then you have United who finished 15th and had to invest. And then you had Spurs who finished 17th, had to invest because they played. So it looked like all the planets really, especially of the top clubs, were aligning for a big window. That big, probably not, especially when the rest of Europe is actually looking how much they spend and where they spend it. I mean, La Liga and the second division in Spain this weekend only had over 150 players not registered because the players, the clubs could not actually register them. In France, we've got no TV rights money anymore, so clubs are very careful and you sell more than you buy. So it seems that it's only in England where there's still a lot of money to be spent, and 2.3 billion, 2.4 billion, that's more than Serie A revenue for a year. That's more than Bundesliga revenue for a year. This is incredible, the power that English clubs have compared to other leagues in Europe.
Thankfully for Barcelona and Marcus Rashford, he did get registered. And
just about, yeah.
Made his debut. You spoke about Liverpool. It's close to £300 million so far that they've spent. It could, if certain things materialise, go through £450 million potentially. It is the biggest saga of the summer, Julien. It is Alexander Isak. It took an explosive twist, didn't it, on Tuesday night? He released that statement, promises have been reneged upon. Newcastle came back with their own statement. No such promises were made. Where does this end?
I still can't see him leaving. I think, and I was told that the decision was taken way above the club, right in Saudi Arabia, when they're saying like, listen, it's our price or no price. If people don't pay what we want, he's staying put. He's got 3 years left on his contract, whether he's happy, not happy, whether he wants to play or not to play. He can sit in the stands for all we know all season long. this is our decision. They are our rules, and these are the rules. I can't see Liverpool going up from 130 million euros to 150. I don't think this will happen. And so then I don't see him leaving Newcastle. I might be wrong. And yesterday, like you said, was another step in this kind of incredible saga. But I just don't see how he can force a move now unless Liverpool are really willing to go big, 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 which I'm not sure they are.
Is this what you're saying there? That the Saudi owners just saying, "Well, we don't care." It's not like they're short of money. It's they're the richest club in the world, but they've got that frustration where they can't actually spend that money. Is that what might swing it though, if he was to go? Because clearly, if Newcastle spent what they wanted to spend, they'd be doing a transfer window like what Liverpool have just done.
Yeah.
But they can't because they've got to comply with these profit and sustainability rules. So with that in mind, is that an issue for them, that maybe if it does go to 130 to 150 million pounds or whatever price they're looking for, that they might have to do it just to reinvest in that squad?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that, and they've tried to find a replacement for him, whether that's Wissa, whether that's Nico Jackson, whether that's Trent Larson. Some of the names that are on the shortlist, they like Conrad Harder at Sporting, but he's not as developed already compared to the others that we mentioned. Certainly no Premier League experience, unlike the other three. Nolly Watkins, for example, I think at some point was a possibility, maybe. But the closer you get to the end of the window, the harder it gets, because if you're Aston Villa, you don't want to let Ollie Watkins go on August 30th or August 31st. Same with Wolves with Trent Larson, same with Brentford with Wissa. All of that is difficult. I also think that there's a bit of in Newcastle, don't really understand what happened with the Ekitike deal at Liverpool, because I think Liverpool knew that Ekitike was almost the perfect replacement for Isak and Newcastle. And yet, by Liverpool signing Ekitike, you took away an ideal replacement. And Ekitike might not have wanted to go to Newcastle. But if Liverpool don't come in for Ekitike, I think he might be interested in Newcastle, very much so. So I think in Newcastle, I think, hang on, you want Isak now, but you also signed the player that we wanted to replace Isak, to let Isak go to your club. So it's all these kind of conundrums and dilemmas and things like that made really, really difficult. But I do think that the Saudis, and you and I know the Saudis and the Qataris really well, and this is how they work. They have their own rules. It's when they want, how they want it, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is just how they work. And very much with this one, they felt that Liverpool were forcing their hands, and you don't really force the hands of the Saudis, of the Qataris, not with the money they have, not when they own football clubs. I saw that with Mbappe at PSG, when the Qataris said to him, listen, if you're going to go one day, we will let you go. Otherwise, you'll have to run down your contract, because it's on our terms here. And it feels to me a little bit like it's the same with Isak and the Saudis and Newcastle.
Yeah, you were mentioning those potential replacements and the players that they're looking at. One other guy that you'll know very well, of course, PSG's Gonzalo Ramos. He's been linked. Is that realistic? Is he good enough to replace someone like Isak?
I think he's very good. I think he is a bit slightly frustrated by his position at the club, in the sense that he's not a starter. The front three is without him. He's the first sub off the bench, maybe the second sub off the bench even, with Barcola, the other one. And that can be a bit frustrating, but he also wins and still scores goals and still play enough to not be completely unhappy. So he said after the game on Sunday against Nantes that he was staying. The club doesn't want to let him go. I think he would take a very, very big offer from Newcastle, both in transfer fee and in wages, to Gonzalo Ramos and to PSG, for them to open the door. So I don't know. I can see why they like him and why he's on the short list. But I think of the four that we mentioned, he's probably the most difficult one to do, I think, because there's no appetite from the club or from him to leave PSG.
Just generally on this, and in particular on a slant towards Liverpool here, Julien, what have you made of how they've approached this whole Alexander Isak situation?
I've got no problem. I'm not really sure exactly what happened with the Ekitike deal, because the way I see it is they could have waited a little bit more, maybe not made the Ekitike deal. Isak could have come out earlier and saying, like, I don't want to train anymore. I want to go to Liverpool. And then he could be a Liverpool player now, probably. But they like Ekitike as well a lot. I've had discussions with people at the club about Ekitike and what happened in Paris and why it didn't work. They had a lot of questions over his talent and personality and everything. In the end, they were very happy to sign him. I think they would be very happy to have them both. They need another forward anyway because they lost Luis Diaz, Darwin, who they sold, and Diogo Jota, unfortunately, in the way we know. And they've only really brought Ekitike in, so they need at least another body there, whether that's a super expensive superstar number 9 like Isak, or a more up-and-coming forward, versatile that can play wide or as a 9 or second striker. I don't know, but they need somebody else. But I knew from the beginning they loved Isak too as much than Ekitike. So I think they thought they could do both, and they might still do. Because they still have money to spend, even on top of a Marc Guehi or centre back, which I find incredible. I mean, who could spend 500 million in one transfer window? Clearly, Liverpool in 2025.
Yeah, certainly can. Just on one of those players that you mentioned, Julien, on potentially coming into Newcastle, not necessarily you would say as a replacement for Isak, is Yoane Wissa. He's actually been seen, as far as I'm told, as a replacement maybe for Callum Wilson, and they're actually looking for the replacement for Isak. Just the latest on him before we carry on. He's livid. He is absolutely furious because he feels, rather like Alexander Isak, that there have been promises made to him that have been reneged upon. He's taken to social media by removing everything to do with Brentford on his social media. It's not on his bio. There's no picture of him on his bio. Every picture that was connected to Brentford is now away from there. From the other side, it should be said that sources at Brentford are telling us, well, no, there weren't these promises, even though it has been corroborated that Wissa has been talking about his future since January, and he believes that he would be allowed to leave. I still think there are legs to go in that particular deal. Some positive news, though, for Brentford fans. The signing of Dango Ouattara for a club record £42 million. But if you look at what's happened so far, they've lost Thomas Frank. They've lost Brian Mbeumo. They potentially could lose Yoane Wissa as well. You've seen how they started at Nottingham Forest over the weekend. And lots of people are talking about, could this be the year where the trend is stopped, where the 3 promoted teams don't all go down? Are Brentford one of those teams that you fear for?
Yeah, a little bit. Don't forget Norgard as well, who I know Mbeumo and Wissa provided the goal and that incredible front too. But Norgard in that midfield was just almost as important, if not more, than the other two. Plus Flecken. It's a tough window that I think they had seen coming and they, in a way, prepared for. Maybe not to lose both Mbeumo and Wissa. And that's why I think they're quite reluctant now to let Yoane go. I mean, I'm biased because he's one of my guys. He's Paris born and bred. And there's a big gap between what Newcastle have offered so far, around the £40 million mark, and what Brentford won at 60 million. Is 60 million a lot of money for Yoane Wissa? I think it is. Is it too much? Probably. Could you meet in between around 50, 45, 50 with bonuses? I think so. He's hoping so for sure. Because I think if you told Yoane Wissa maybe 3 seasons ago that there would be an opportunity to play for Newcastle in the Champions League and in a team that is aiming for a top 5 finish in the Premier League, I'm not sure he would have believed, or you and I would have believed it either. So this is a huge opportunity for him that might not come back, and that's why I think he's so frustrated that he feels he hasn't been able to go there and to fulfill that dream in a way. So I can see his point of view. I can see Brentford's, because it would be a huge loss again that I'm not sure how you replace it really. But if Newcastle don't improve their offer anyway, it's not going to go there. 40 million in Brentford eyes is not enough.
Okay, I'll put you on the spot very quickly before we move on. Alexander Isak, September the 2nd, where is he?
In Newcastle.
Yoane Wissa, September the 2nd, where is he?
In Newcastle.
Oh, okay. We've got that on
what about you
record now, yeah?
I'm going to put you on the spot.
So we've got to move on here, Julien.
No, you have to tell me as well. Where will be Isak on September the 2nd?
Okay, Isak. Do you know what? It feels like it's gone too far. I'm going to agree with you on both.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I'll agree with you on both. Newcastle United for both. You're a bad man. I've got John is my friend. John, the producer, is my friend. He will edit that last bit out just for me. Yours is staying in.
Okay, mine is staying.
Okay, Julien, I'm sure you kept an eye on the Super Sunday game. What a way to start the season. Manchester United against Arsenal. You don't often get a big blockbuster game like that on the opening weekend of the season. Just give us an idea. You know, we saw Benjamin Sesko and Victor Gyökeres. It was billed as Sesko against Gyökeres. I mean, Sesko came on in the second half, of course. Gyökeres started. Have you seen any glimpses of what fans can expect, or far too early to judge?
No, I think it's a bit too early to judge. And you know how social media works and fan base work, and suddenly you'll try to look at everything. Gyökeres played an hour, Sesko played 30 minutes. They clearly, you could see, especially with the Gyökeres hour of football on the pitch, that there's still a lot of things for him to adapt to this Arsenal team and the way this team plays. He's a player that is very comfortable in transition. For example, when Arsenal are a team that doesn't really do transitions, they like the control, they like to play at their own pace, they like when everything is in place and then they can put the attack together. There's a couple of times where Odegaard is on the ball at Old Trafford on Sunday, where there's a ball there in transition for Gyökeres, and instead he keeps it, gets another touch, slows things down, and wait for Saka to be there on the right hand side, and then get everybody in place. So this would change, and they would play more on Gyökeres' strength than maybe they did at Old Trafford. But that's normal. That was the first official game really that he was there. For Šeško, we saw how good Mbeumo and Cunha were, and how much already they've changed the attacking power for United. He would be the same, but again, he just needs a bit of time to adapt. He used to play in a front two with Openda at Leipzig. He's always really played in front twos. This is very different to be on your own with two number 10s behind you and wing backs around you. But I think it was interesting to hear Ruben Amorim after the game saying we need crosses in the box for Šeško, which I agree. The guy is big and strong and good in the air. I think he can also do a lot of other things than just having balls kind of like thrown at him from each wings in the box when he will face some of the best centre defenders and physical centre defenders in Europe. So let's see how United adapt to Šeško and how Šeško adapts to them, and same with Gyökeres at Arsenal.
A key word, isn't it? Adapt. I want to just pick up on that because you talked about Mbeumo and Cunha making a bright start, and reasons to be optimistic there for Manchester United fans, of course. What does it mean for Bruno Fernandes? Because there's a lot of conjecture. He's United's best player for the past few seasons, and yet does he actually fit into a Ruben Amorim style of play, and where?
Yeah, I think he fits now in that deeper role because they don't have a passer like him who can play there. Ugarte can't pass the ball. Casemiro is an okay passer, but this is not what he's there for. He's there to recover the ball, to break the opposition's attack. He needs somebody next to him that can pass the ball. That guy is Bruno. But you lose a lot of what Bruno would bring you if he was playing higher up the pitch. You saw the game on Sunday. He was far from the Arsenal box, far too often, really, for him to be decisive like he was in previous season. I would have Bruno playing higher up, but again, they need him badly in that deeper role in midfield, and until they find somebody else, which they might even not do. So it'd be interesting to see that. And then even if they did sign another midfielder, then it's him, Cunha, and Mbeumo for the three number 10. Even Mount, to be fair, who I thought was decent against Arsenal.
Yeah.
4 for those two number 10 positions behind whoever the striker. I guess Cunha can be that guy, and you can play Bruno and Mbeumo behind him. You can have Šeško and Cunha and Bruno behind. There's a lot of things then that Ruben Amorim can do. At least he's got options now, and he can do different things with all the firepower he's got up front. But yeah, I love Bruno. I just think that deeper, you waste a little bit. Not waste is a bit too strong. But you prevent yourself from having all his qualities closer to the opposition box when he's going to be lethal there. But that's the way they are now. Until they find another midfielder, he has to play there alongside Casemiro.
Well, they did find one, but they couldn't do the deal because it was going to prove too expensive, and Brighton said no with regard to Carlos Baleba. Do you think United may have learnt lessons from previous transfer windows, that previously you could argue that someone like Carlos Baleba might have been a first choice, and once that didn't happen, they thought we're going to have to get someone, and they spent huge amounts of money trying to get another midfielder to fill that role, not necessarily their first choice.
Yeah.
Would it be advisable for United just to take a step back, and if there's still a possibility in future transfer windows, maybe not January, but next summer, to maybe pursue Carlos Baleba again? Is it worth the wait, and have they got enough for this season to be able to wait for that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think it's a great debate that they would have had internally. To Baleba is 120 million euros. Is that too much money? Maybe, but then he's one, outstanding. Two, he will be your midfielder for the next 10 years. When you have Casemiro at his age, Bruno at his age, Mainu, I mean, Amorim is not a fan. It's just as simple as that. And Ugarte, who has big limitations in his own game. I don't know. I guess the answer, which I know is a bit a simplistic answer, but let's see who they sign. If they sign somebody that is not Baleba, and then we will see if they were right or not to pass on Baleba and sign somebody else. If they don't sign anybody, I think they're short. I think they're too short. At least they don't play in Europe this season, which is an absolute blessing for them. But even for the Premier League, I'm not sure you can finish in the top 5, for example, with Casemiro, Ugarte, Mainu, and Bruno as your 4 options in those 2 deeper midfielders. I think that's not enough. That's not good enough.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they do go back into the market. As far as we're aware at this stage, with only a few days to go, it doesn't look likely. But of course, that can change. Look, midfield was an area. We've got to talk about the goalkeeper, because Andre Onana, he wasn't dropped, according to Ruben Amorim. It just said, look, he hasn't trained that long. He hasn't had much game time. So Altay Bayindir came in. Was a huge fault for the goal. That can't be escaped. Gary Neville has suggested they have to go out and sign a new goalkeeper. Do you agree? And there's a certain Gianluigi Donnarumma who's available. Is he the answer?
I agree that they need another goalkeeper. Like they went in for Donnarumma 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago. They got in touch with Enzo Raiola, his agent. You don't contact Donnarumma's agent if you don't want a goalkeeper. Otherwise, this is just stupid. Why would you do this? So the fact that they got in touch with Donnarumma and maybe other goalkeepers, or certainly their entourage, shows you that they were clearly in for a goalkeeper, or certainly wanted to find out a bit more about some goalkeeper situation to see what they do. I don't think Amorim trusts Onana at all. I think Bayindir is an okay goalkeeper, but just about good enough to be a number 2 at a club like United. Just about. But unless you sell Onana, you can't bring in a goalkeeper now. And who's going to sign Andre Onana right now with 10 days to go in the transfer window? I'm not sure. So I thought Donnarumma would be great for them. I think they can afford him. But the problem is, unless Onana goes, they can't. I don't think it would be wise for them to sign another goalkeeper. And that's where the difficulty is for them. On top of that midfielder that they are still chasing, that they want to sign, or maybe not, because they might want to wait for Baleba another 6 months or another year. It's a little bit that uncertainty around what they do next, I think, is right up there. But for me, and Sunday showed it again, and what we saw from Onana last season, they need a better goalkeeper already, for sure.
I think also when you look before this window opened, a lot of the pundits and a lot of the experts says this is not a 1 window fix. This is a 3 or 4 transfer window fix. So maybe if they accept that, I know Manchester United fans will get excited because they've revamped their front 3, but then they got to be patient as well. And I think United fans might accept, because of the mistakes they've made in the past, that if there is that chance that Baleba can come, then it's going to be very difficult to bring in a midfielder now, because you might be spending the budget that would have helped you get Baleba next time. Just picking really up on what you said about Donnarumma, though, Julien, where do you see him ending up then? If United aren't going to sell any of their goalkeepers, which it doesn't look likely at the moment, I think you've spoken about Manchester City and the whole Ederson situation, which we'll come to Ederson in a moment, but where do you see him?
It can only be City. They're the only club in for him right now, which it sort of baffles me for many reasons. One, I don't know why other clubs like maybe an Inter Milan would want to go for Donnarumma, or even back in Italy, people, there are not many more better goalkeepers in the world right now than him anyway. And yet only Man City are kind of talking to his people and talking to PSG to see what's possible and how quickly they could do it, which then leads us to is he the right fit for Guardiola and Manchester City? And the answer is 100% that he isn't. This is not. But I don't want City fans to go after me. No, on his line, on those saves that we saw he made for PSG in the Champions League, he's the best in the world. Him and Courtois, there is no one better. I give you that, and that's great. And maybe that's enough for Guardiola to say, yes, I want him, and City fans would be excited and happy. However, everything that a goalkeeper has to do, well, the most important thing that a goalkeeper has to do for Pep Guardiola is being really good with the ball at his feet. We know that. Remember what happened to Joe Hart or Claudio Bravo or people like that. If you're not good with the ball at your feet, you're not a Guardiola goalkeeper. Donnarumma is not good. He's not good with the ball at his feet. His distribution is not good, certainly not good enough for a Guardiola City team. Then his other weakness, in a way, is he doesn't come out for the ball in the air. He doesn't like coming out for crosses, corners, anything you want. If there is one league in the whole world where your goalkeeper has to be that brave, and we saw that with Bayindir against Arsenal with United, is the Premier League. So I cannot see how Guardiola thinks, he's the perfect guy for me when he can't play with the ball at his feet and he doesn't come out on crosses and set pieces. And PSG have conceded many goals because of that, both in the league and in the Champions League in the last 3 years or 4 years. I just don't know. On top of that, it's going to cost you around £40 million in transfer fee. And he wants big wages, which is what was one of the problems at PSG, that he could not agree on extension. Probably around the £350,000 a week. I don't know. I know he's only 26, so he's still young enough. He can be at your club for 10 years. But all of that makes me think, really, City? Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend, of course, on Ederson as well. Interest from Turkey and Saudi Arabia. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the last few days, whether Ederson goes and then Donnarumma comes in. We've touched on City there. I just want to pick up very quickly on United and some of the potential outgoings there, Julien. Jadon Sancho, of course.
What is going on?
Well, we know that AS Roma are pushing to do that deal still. Gianpiero Gasperini is a really big fan of Jadon Sancho, and he's driving that deal. But I'm told it hasn't broken down on personal terms, but it looks like Sancho is looking at other options. Rasmus Højlund as well, AC Milan desperately want to bring him in, but they want a loan with an option. Højlund and United would prefer a permanent deal. I think Højlund initially wanted to fight for his place at Manchester United, but I think he was given the message on Sunday loud and clear, not in the squad at all. And then, of course, there's Alejandro Garnacho, gap in valuation between Manchester United and Chelsea. And he's made it clear he only wants to go to Chelsea because Bayern Munich have come in and he has rejected their advances. So it'll be interesting to see again there, because the focus definitely at Old Trafford is on departures. We talked there very briefly about Donnarumma, Ederson there, Julien, but City, everyone was very, very impressed and marvelling at the performance of Tierney Reinders there against Wolves. So a 3-word question: are City back?
Yeah, I think they are. I just think that Reinders, not just Reinders, but the transfer that they made this summer already, and I think more might come between now and the end of the window, outside of even Donnarumma, was very good. Reinders, what amazes me always, Dams, and I know you in England, you've got the best league in the world, and it's completely normal that you just watch the best league in the world. But it seems that a lot of people, a lot of City fans even, just didn't know anything about Reinders before the game on Sunday. When he has played in the Club World Cup, when he played really well against Palermo in the only friendly that they had before the start of the season, and then people almost discovering Tierney Reinders in that game against Wolves, where he's been doing that for Milan last year. He was voted best midfielders in Serie A. He was outstanding at times with the Dutch national team. He played really well. Even when he was at Alkmaar before, he always had that kind of huge potential. And more importantly, I think he always had all the qualities to do well in a top Premier League club, because he just can do everything in midfield. He's one of those all-around, super complete midfielder, if you want, that can score, that can defend, that can attack, that can tackle, that can recover the ball, that can find a pass. Everything that we saw against Wolves, and Wolves were not very good, and there will be tougher games for City and Reinders where he will not shine as much. He's not going to have this kind of game through the whole season every weekend. But that was very promising. Like was Ryan Cherki's entrance. Like was a lot of the things that we saw from a City point of view, Ryan Ait-Nouri, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think they are back. Back at what point to win the title ahead of Liverpool and Arsenal? I really think that them three it would be tight through the whole season between them three. And whoever wins it will be one of them three, and it would be just by a very thin margin. So it could well be City, but it was really good to see their flow back on Sunday against Wolves. Or Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it looks set to be a much tighter title race than it was last season. You mentioned him there, Ryan Cherki. Pep Guardiola called him a player who's got unbelievable talent. And I can see you smiling now, Julien, because I know you love this player. How do you see his role at City, though? Because obviously he didn't start the game against Wolves, but made a huge impact when he came on. Is he going to be one of those players that is going to make it so difficult for Pep Guardiola not to start him?
Yeah, I think so. And I think there will be games where he'll be on the bench, and there's so many options again, in this squad now. Going forward for all those positions we saw Bernardo Silva playing as a 10, but that could have been Marmoush, that could have been Reinders, that could have been Cherki, that could have been Foden, that could have been a lot of other options. So it will be the Pep roulette again, I think, quite a lot of the time, and Ryan is ready for that. But there will be games where he starts because there is nobody better in the Premier League at playing in tight spaces against deeper low blocks where you just don't have anything, because Cherki is an absolute genius of the game technically. He's right-footed, left-footed whenever he wants to be. He sees things before. The more people in a small space, the better for him, because that's how he learned to play in the streets in Lyon, on the concrete. So it's just amazing. And you saw the goal. It's a little flick, it's the step over, and then it's that shot. It's just wonderful. You don't know if he's going to shoot with his right foot or left foot because he's as easy on either. And it's a wonderful talent. I just think Pep can take him to the next level, individually, collectively, that France can benefit massively from that. And that he's ready for it. He's ready to put the effort in. He's taken the number 10 shirt, which is wonderful because he's the most 10 of all 10s, if you want. And yeah, I'm really excited. I think at the start, certainly, as we saw against Wolves, and I expect, again, as we will see against Spurs, he might be on the bench at the start of the season. But I think he will earn his place and win his place and be a starter very soon.
You're eulogising about that goal, and rightly so, because people actually do forget in the mayhem that was that Europa League semi-final between Manchester United and Lyon, when all the talk was about Maguire's and Mainu's stoppage time goals in extra time. The guy who'd actually put Lyon in control with a similar kind of finish, you'd have to say, to the one he did the other day. So he had given forewarning, hadn't he, Ryan Cherki? Because he scored a fantastic goal at Old Trafford last season.
Yeah, and I remember talking to his people and things before the second leg, especially. The first leg he was good and scored, but the second leg felt to him, okay, this is my chance to show England and Premier League clubs what I'm about. And for an hour it was not good because Lyon were not good in the game where Paulo Fonseca kind of messed up his tactics and his starting lineup. But after that, he took control of the game, and you just can't get the ball off him. It's just as simple as that. That ball was great. It was an incredible night, and being there, I saw something that I would not see many times again in my career. But it was absolutely incredible. But I think he showed that night that he was ready for the Premier League. And I think City at 40 million euros got an absolute bargain of a genius of a player there.
Yeah, and you mentioned it there. It's Tottenham Hotspur up for City next. Always a very, very entertaining game, that one. And talking of Tottenham Hotspur, they are really now pushing to sign Eberechi Eze, aren't they? Still in talks, the clubs. The latest is that Palace will want to bring in a replacement, or at least line one up before Eze was to leave. He's a unique player for Crystal Palace, though, isn't he? So how difficult is it going to be to kind of find a replacement going forward? They've been linked with Bilal Al-Khanous from Leicester. They're in talks with them. Club Bruges, Christos Solis as well is another player that they're interested in. Are these ready-made replacements? Are they big risks for Palace? Or are Palace going to have to sign maybe 1, 2 or 3 players and kind of play in a different way, because Eze brings a unique style to their football, doesn't he?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think both of Solis and El Khanous, who are two very different wide players, if you want. El Khanous probably closer to Eze in terms of he's a 10 that plays wide, but they can also play more centrally behind the striker. Solis being a winger, a pure winger for the listeners who watched the Rangers Club Brugge game in the Champions League playoff qualifiers, first leg on Tuesday night. He was outstanding in that game. And if I was Palace, instead of choosing one or the other, I would sign them both. That would give you two very different options, more traditional wingers and more of a number 10, where you could almost play them both if you wanted. El Khanous central, Solis wide, Sarr wide, and Mateta on his own front if you wanted to change your system in some games. And even if you keep that back three that Glasner's implemented there so well, then Solis can play wide and then Sarr wide on the other side. You will still have your wing backs and Mateta in the box. That could work really well. El Khanous, I think, would fit in well in a kind of another inside 10, like Sarr behind Mateta, like they do now with Eze. So those two, I think, would be very smart signings from Palace. That probably would cost you around the £60 million that you would get from Spurs for Eze anyway. So I think that would be good. They're good. I know they're looking at a couple more players as well in those kind of profiles. We'll see, but it would be a huge loss, like Guehi would be, to be fair. And I don't think El Khanous or Solis will be ready now to bring the same as Eze or same level of performance, I mean. But maybe next year, maybe in 2 years' time, you could see that happening. The problem with clubs like Crystal Palace, when they lose an Olise or an Eze or Guehi, you don't replace them with a similar kind of level players because you just can't afford them. So you have to start again, bringing somebody young. Diomande from Sporting could be a very good replacement for Guehi. Is he ready now to be like Guehi? No, he's not. But in a year time or maybe even 6 month time, he will be close maybe to the level that Guehi had at Palace. Same with El Khanous, same with Solis for Eze.
We'll come to Guehi in just a moment, but just on Eze, I don't know what your understanding of this is, Julien, but a lot of Arsenal fans are pretty unhappy that he could be on his way to Tottenham Hotspur because they were looking at him earlier on in this transfer window. My understanding of this one is, yes, they did have a look at him. They kept an eye on his situation, but it was at the same time that they were trying to tie down Ethan Nwaneri to a new contract. So because that one took a little while and they had other priorities during the window when they've spent well and they've spent big, £200 million on 6 players and a few of them who go straight into that team, that's probably why now that they've reinforced that forward attack and the Nwaneri one is pretty significant, isn't it?
Yeah.
With regard to Arsenal and their longer term future.
Yeah, absolutely. It was massive for them to extend Nwaneri's deal and Lewis Kelly's deal as well, while you wait for Max Darman at some point to be in that situation as well and sign his first pro contract. Also, they need to sell Dams. It's just as simple as that. Spurs have the money available. It's there. They had money to spend for Thomas Frank this summer, and I wouldn't put it past Daniel Levy to make things more difficult because, he doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to pay the solidarity fee or, whatever. So I would believe the Eze deal to Spurs once he's signed on paper because things can always change with Daniel Levy and Spurs. But that money was there. For Arsenal, they would need to let Fabio Vieira go and Zinchenko go and Reece Nelson go maybe and a couple more before being able to make that offer to Palace.
Lokonga, Kivior as well.
Yeah, Lokonga, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's not going to be done just like this.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure how many of them will leave before the end of the transfer window. So this was the problem as well that Arsenal needs to understand is that for somebody like Eze or somebody on that left-hand side, they have to sell first before being able to put an offer in for somebody.
So let's talk Marc Guehi then, Julien, because for me this is an interesting one. From the outset, it looks like if Liverpool do come in, it's a no-brainer for Marc Guehi. You go to Liverpool. However, this is a World Cup year.
Yeah.
At the moment, and I know he was criticised over the weekend, Ibrahima Konate is currently the first choice partner for Virgil van Dijk. So it's not as simple as just go there, is it? Because he's got to think about his first team opportunities. And for you, does he start for Liverpool week in, week out? Or is he best, however much that might not suit Crystal Palace because they could end up losing him for free, but for his own career, is he best staying at Palace for this season in a World Cup year?
This is the dilemma that I think he has, right? It's either you go from a starting place and a captain armband at Crystal Palace playing in Europe FA Cup winner, Community Shield winner, to going to a club where you will be a sub. Certainly at the start, he will be a sub. He's the third choice centre-back behind Van Dijk and behind Konate. And there's enough games for Liverpool this season in all competition for him to still play, 25 games, enough minutes to probably still be in the squad for Thomas Tuchel going to the US, Mexico and Canada next year. Yeah, sure. But is that the season you want before World Cup? When you've been so good for the last 2 years, really, and have earned that place as a starter, more likely than not for England, I'm not sure that's it.
That's
for
the
Liverpool,
difference, isn't it?
Yeah,
squad being in the England squad compared to being in the England team.
Completely, yeah. And for Liverpool, it's a no-brainer. You get a great centre-back. In a year's time, you're going to lose Konate on a free, probably, because I'm not sure he's going to extend that deal, although he's got a new offer on the table now that he's considering. But I'm not sure where this is going. So for Liverpool, you're good. You've got that. You signed Leone, who's a wonderful young player from Italy, super talented, one for the future, no doubt. So you're in good place if you're Liverpool. If you're Guehi, I think it might be a little bit more difficult. But again, I think there will be enough games for him to play enough to be in the squad. But like you said, it's a difference between being in the squad and being the starter for England as centre-back at the World Cup.
Julien, as we record this, there are 12 days left in this transfer window. Crystal Palace still have Eze and Guehi in their squad. How much of a blow would it be in these last 12 days if they were to lose both?
I think it'd be huge. Whoever you replace them with, because like we've been saying, whoever comes in will take time, will need time to try to even get to the level that Eze and Guehi were at when they were at Crystal Palace. And we saw that with Ismail Assar when he came in to replace Michael Olise. It took him a good 6 months to really be convincing for Palace. And again, he was never as good as Olise was anyway. So it would be a huge blow. What must be frustrating, Dams, I think, for clubs like that, and I guess it would be the same for Brentford losing Wissa in 3 or 4 days, is that this could have happened 3 weeks ago at the beginning of August. And that's why I'm all for this transfer window to shut when the season starts so much, instead of being like that when games have been played and now a big club can come in and attract your best player with 2 or 3 days for you to replace them, integrate the new signing, which is not going to happen very quickly. Then the international breaks, those players are going to go away with the national. It's just a nightmare, really. And I feel a little bit for those clubs, because you're right, Palace will be in that position, Brentford might well be, and others will be the same. Wolves, maybe, clubs like that will need to quickly sign a replacement for their superstar striker or superstar midfielder or best player in their team, and it's just not easy when they could have done it 3 or 4 weeks ago and it would have been much easier for everyone.
We need to speak about Chelsea now, Julien. In a news conference ahead of the draw with Crystal Palace at the weekend, some might say bravely, Chelsea manager Enzo Maresca suggested the club needed a new centre-back to cover Levi Colwill after he suffered that cruel ACL injury. He said, "I think we need a central defender. We are trying to find solutions internally. The club know exactly what I think." Now, maybe the club aren't in total agreement with Enzo Maresca, but that aside, it's a big priority, would you say? I know we talk about the amount that Chelsea spend and the number of players that they've got, but we continually talk about, they still need players in this position.
Yeah. Which is incredible, isn't it? Because by now they would have spent almost 1.5 billion since Todd Boehly and Bluco arrived, and they're still short in some positions. I mean, short of talent for sure, not short of numbers or bodies, but in talent we can look at goalkeepers, we can look at other positions in that midfield or in that defense. Enzo Maresca can wish anything he wants, can say anything he wants. I would like this, and I would like a new car, and I would like a new barber, and I would like anything he wants.
He won't need a barber.
No, not the barber.
I won't either. I know.
No, but I thought that was a good joke. But it's not him who decides. And this is the thing. And you talk enough, Dams, to sporting directors or managers or agents of managers to know that in some clubs, if the manager says something, the sporting director and the people above him go and get him that player or a player for that position. Chelsea is one of those clubs where the sporting directors, and they've got enough of them, and many of them are the ones driving the transfer window, driving the recruitment, not the manager. And yes, of course, they've got meetings with Maresca where Maresca says, I think this, I think that. At the end of the day, it is the sporting director, Paul Winstanley, Lawrence Stewart, Jewel, whoever you want, who are deciding what we sign. Back in January, Maresca wanted another number 9, because he thought Jackson on his own is not enough and Kunku is not number 9. I need Guyu. There's no point. And yet they didn't want to and didn't agree with him and they didn't sign a number 9. I think it will be the same this time. They've got Badiashile coming back from injury at some point. They've got Atto, who can play left back or left centre back, who's left-footed, who played centre back for Ajax before, who's very good, who they spend a lot of money on. They've got high hopes for. I just don't think that Maresca is going to be heard here, and that I don't think they're going to sign another centre back.
Where he might be heard, well, if it's him who wants these players, Alejandro Garnacho and Xavi Simons, those ones look likely. That's provided Chelsea can, you mentioned some of those players there, can ship out some of these first team forwards that they've got. You kept an eye on that game against Crystal Palace. Was there anything in that performance that suggested to you that Simons and Alejandro Garnacho are the players that they need and will make a difference?
I think they would be good for them, for sure. And again, it would provide different options, variation in the way you attack. We saw Jamie Gittens making his Premier League debut on that left-hand side, where I think the team as a whole was disappointed. I was on the radio with Steve Sidwell before the game, and Steve, obviously as a former Chelsea player, was very excited. He said, "This is great. Look what we saw at the Club World Cup. They're going to start strongly." And I said, I think they've just come back to training 10 days ago. They're nowhere near ready physically for a Premier League game, especially against a team like Palace, who started their pre-season 6 weeks ago, who played friendlies, who played the Community Shield, all of that. Just trust me, Chelsea are going to be sloppy and rusty and tired and won't have the legs. And I just want to say that I was right and Steve was wrong, because Steve said a lot of the things that were right. But we kind of knew this was going to happen. It happened the same with PSG against Nantes, because they had this Club World Cup that was great, but then had holidays and they've just come back to their pre-season, really. And this is still part of pre-season. They will need another 2 or 3 games to be ready physically, much ready for the Premier League anyway. So I was not surprised by that. I think Xavi Simons would be a great signing for them. And I think Christopher Nkunku could go back to Leipzig and not have a direct swap, because you don't do things like that anymore. But I think they could cross paths and Xavi comes to Chelsea and Nkunku goes back to Leipzig. For Garnacho, he only wants Chelsea, like Xavi Simons, by the way, only wants Chelsea. There's a big difference in valuation between what United want and what Chelsea are ready to offer for somebody like Garnacho. And I think this one might be a bit more tricky for Chelsea to do than the Xavi Simons one.
Yeah, it's interesting about these valuations, isn't it? Because lots of clubs now are basing their valuations on the market, which they're right to do. So Chelsea will say, well, look, Anthony Elanga went for over £50 million, and Noni Madueke will go for over £50 million, which is what ended up happening when they sold him to Arsenal all in. But they don't want to pay the £50 million that Manchester United value Garnacho at. And you can understand both sides on this one, can't you? Because United will compare the market and they'll say, yes, he is worth the same value as Elanga or Madueke. Whereas Chelsea will say, well, actually, we didn't actually make a move to say we don't want Madueke. Manchester United have made it clear they don't want him. So Chelsea are probably playing on that fact to think, well, we can get him for less than that, can't we? Yeah,
completely. And right now, really, you would say that Chelsea in a stronger position, because they know that United not just want Garnacho out, they need Garnacho out. They need that money. They need to recoup a money that will go straight into the bank again, because he's considered as an academy product, really, even if he's not really, but it is in terms of accounting for United. So it's huge for them to get 40 or 50 million for him that we can go straight into the profit side of their bank account. And Chelsea know that. And Chelsea say, if you don't want to have 40 million, no problem. But you're not going to get any other money from anybody else. And you're going to keep him and not playing for the next 6 months until we can revisit this in January. It would be crazy. And that's very much Chelsea's stance right now. And that's why they think that eventually, late in that window, they could do Garnacho for their price, not for United's price.
Yeah, one of those players that you mentioned that could exit Chelsea, Christopher Nkunku, but Bayern were interested. They wanted to do a loan with an option. I think Chelsea definitely want to do a sale at £43 million. RB Leipzig definitely pushing to sign him as well. Are you a tad sad that it didn't work out for Nkunku? Because I know he's had his injury problems, but when he arrived, I don't think anyone was anything but impressed with the business that Chelsea had done there, because they thought this guy is going to work for them and he's going to work in the Premier League.
Yeah, so disappointed, really. And I feel for him, and I feel for the club as well, and for the Chelsea fans, because you're right, Dams. It was not everybody wanted him, but loads of top clubs in Europe wanted him. And he chose Chelsea. Remember, he chose Chelsea before the end of the season. So he signed a kind of a pre-contract, which I always think is a little bit dangerous or risky, because what happens if that
you
team
don't
doesn't
see many
qualify?
players do that anymore,
No,
do you, either?
really strange, really. And I said to his people at the time, I said, I'm not really sure this is why. And they were trying to justify it and explaining, no, but it's good because now he's got peace of mind. He can focus on the end of the season. All of that. I said, okay, but why if Chelsea don't qualify for Europe? If the manager changes, if the ownership changes, if the sporting direction, I don't know. There's a lot of things that can happen between February when you sign that pre-contract and the summer when you actually show up at that club. And I think things never really clicked, never really worked out. They never really played him in his right position, which I know it's a bit of an unusual second striker kind of role. Not many teams play, as we said, with two up front, things like that. But he's a wonderful player that Chelsea fans never really got to see it. So it's a shame. Sometimes things don't work out. It doesn't mean that you're a bad player or a bad club. It's just that the context is... I always say there's no bad players at that level anyway. You know, there's bad context or the wrong context for X, Y, and Z. And that's exactly the case for Nkunku. It was just the wrong context.
Andre Santos, Julien, another player could potentially be leaving Chelsea. West Ham United thought to be interested in him. Big season on loan at Chelsea's sister club Strasbourg last season. He's into Carlo Ancelotti's Brazil squad as well for the first time. This would be a huge coup for a club like West Ham United if they were able to attract Andre Santos to the London Stadium, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there is something that Chelsea know that I don't clearly. I don't know what it is. I don't understand why they don't like him, unless they have to sell him for PSR, reasons, financial reasons, maybe. But Andre Santos was one of Ligue 1's best midfielder last season. He's an outstanding player, outstanding talent that can do everything. He's a great leader. He's got a great mentality. He's a good kid. He works hard. There's something clearly that Chelsea don't like about him that I just don't know. Otherwise, what lets him go? You can keep him. He can easily be in that rotation with Lavia, Caicedo, and Enzo for those four kind of midfield positions. It would be great. You don't have to start him. He will never moan. He will never be whining. It's just I just don't get it. Unless really purely it's just financial reasons, and then in that case, okay, I understand, and they need to let him go for that. But he's really good. I promise you that he's really good. I know a lot of Chelsea fans would not have watched maybe Ligue 1 last season and him and Strasbourg, but he was outstanding. Even in the top games against the Marseille or PSG's, Monaco, he was kind of bossing the midfield. And I'm like, really? That's not good enough for Chelsea? In a squad that is a bit light in that midfield area, in kind of defensive midfield area. I just don't get it. Unless again it's financial. But yeah, I think it would be great for West Ham or whoever gets him. I think it would be a great signing.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever done a Transfer Talk podcast without talking about Chelsea. And I don't think we've ever done a Transfer Talk podcast without talking about Nottingham Forest. Yeah. So before we go, we need to speak about them because they announced their third signing in as many days and that they're interested in Douglas Luiz from Juventus as well. And that one looks like it's got legs in it too. But the latest one, Arnaud Calimuendo, who not many people will know about. They bought him from Rennes, Julien. Chris Wood, obviously the main man at Forest. But how good is Calimuendo and where do you see him fitting in at Forest?
Yeah, really interesting one, this one, because he had a lot of interest this summer from German clubs and English clubs. He chose Forest, which is an interesting pick because, as you said, they play with one striker. That guy is very much Chris Wood, like Chris walking on water Wood, as we can call him now on the show. Just incredible. So if you Calimuendo, you arrive already in a position where you'll have to show your worth and you're not going to start anytime soon. He can play as a second striker, sure, although that's not really Nuno's game plan. He could play wide, but doesn't have the profile that Hudson-Odoi has, or like a pacey winger has on the other side either. But I guess, again, it's a different profile that can give you another option and variation in what you do attacking-wise for Forest. So he's a good signing. He scored 17 goals last season in Ligue 1, had another good season the year before that. PSG academy product, Paris born and bred. So I'm obviously very, very keen on him. I like him a lot. And I think he's a great finisher in the box, just that one touch finish, be in the right place at the right time. He's that kind of striker. So it could be very interesting to see what happens with Forest, who will have a lot of games between the Europa League, the domestic cups, the Premier League, all of that. So he will have enough game time. But he was a key player in the front under 21 teams under Thierry Henry and Gal Clichy. And I think he feels ready for this step up from Rennes in Ligue 1, which is a good club, but not a top club, to a very good club in the Premier League like Forest. So let's see, but it's an interesting one. And I guess at 30 million, you don't take too many risks either.
Yeah, talking about forward options at Nottingham Forest, that they also announced James McAtee and Amari Hutchinson as well.
Yeah.
There's lots of talk about Nottingham Forest, and at the start of this window, when they weren't getting many deals done, when they didn't know where it was going to be, Conference League or Europa League, well, it's now Europa League, and I think that's kind of kick-started their window in a way. Definitely. Because now they can attract, you would think, even better quality of player. A lot of people are thinking there's no way that they can repeat what they did last season. But the more quality that they bring in, would you be surprised if they were to have a similar season again?
Yeah, I still would, because if you look again at the underlying stats from last season, they really overachieve. I mean, you might not be a big XG fan or XG against or all that kind of stats, but it would be hard for them to reproduce what they did. Chris Wood himself in terms of goal scoring, but also the whole team from Sales to Murillo, Milenkovic, Aina, etc. But at least they're giving them a good chance of trying to reproduce that with the signing that they're making. Although I want to see and wait and see where McAtee fits. Hutchinson, okay, it's a direct replacement for Elanga, no problem. But where is Kalumwendo, who's going to play with Douglas Luiz in that deeper midfield role? Where is going to be McAtee? All that kind of stuff. Same if they sign Rico Lewis. Would you sign Rico Lewis really when you've got Ola Aina, who's one of the best right backs in the league last season, who you gave a new contract to? So there's still a lot of that. I think that is very interesting to see and what Nuno does. But I still think that for them to be as good as they were last season will take something very special. But hey, you never say never in football. We know that well enough.
Just one final one before I let you go, Julien. Leeds United, they've agreed a deal with AC Milan for the signing of Noah Okafor. It's worth around £18 million, including add-ons. First of all, is it a good signing? And the second part of the question is what I alluded to before. The three promoted clubs, are we going to see for the first time in 3 seasons, all of them not going straight back down?
Yeah, that's the big one. I mean, last season we had to wait for October 5th before one of the promoted side won a Premier League game. This time we had 2 in 2 days, because Sunderland on Saturday and Everton and Leeds against Everton on Monday won their opening game, which is incredible. I think Burnley will go back down. Sorry, Burnley fans, but I don't think the recruitment has been there. I don't think the team is good enough right now to be able to stay up. Sunderland, I like a lot what they're doing. I like their manager, Regis Lebris, a lot, and their investment. I think a guy like Granit Xhaka is a huge signing for them and could be the difference here for them to stay up. And for Leeds, Okafor is a good player. He was very good in Germany. Then things didn't work out at Milan, even less at Napoli on loan the last 6 months of last season. So he needs to almost relaunch his career, and I think he's got qualities for the Premier League and to play for Leeds. I thought Gnonto was quite good enough, well, certainly good enough in that Everton game on Monday on that left-hand side. And Daniel James was good on the right-hand side too. So I'm not sure where Okafor fits really, if he will replace one of them too. But he will bring energy and goals and pace to this Leeds attack for sure. I think I would pick Sunderland to be the one staying up. If I can pick 2, I think Leeds could very much stay up. But if I can only have one, I think probably I would say Sunderland.
There it is. We've got all of this on record. Let's see if you are proved right with many of these predictions you've made, Julien. But in all seriousness, thank you so much once again. It has been, as I mentioned at the top, far too long to have you back on the Transfer Talk podcast. So thanks so much for your time, and enjoy if that is the rest of, if that's the right term, endure maybe the rest of this transfer window, Julien.
Thank you, mate. And you too as well. And at the end, great work that you've done so far this summer. There's just only 12 days to go. So keep not sleeping at night. Keep your phone close by and you'll get there. And then we can go and have a good meal.